encyclopedia what the Modi lovers say. So, and one minister, he just went on to say recently in Delhi that economics is not something through which elections can be won. So, what is your take on that?
Ashley, one question here in the middle. Yeah. Ashley?
Ma'am, my question is for actually both of you. Ma'am, in a lot of interviews, Jayati ma'am, you have said that the government should actually invest in sectors like healthcare and education where there will be multiplier effects and there can be people who can be employed. So last year we have seen that companies like say Cognizant or Infosys have laid down 10,000 to 12,000 more employees. So even if the government does invest in these sectors like healthcare and education, where are these skilled workers or skilled employees going to be rehabilitated and employed without having to change their current skills, or like how would you guarantee them employment?
One final question at the back.
Hello ma'am, nice to see you here.
Sorry, can you speak louder?
Hello.
Hey, it's on.
Hello. Nice to see you here ma'am. मेरा सवाल ये है कि काफ़ी आर्टिकल में ये बोला जा रहा है कि ये इकोनॉमिक स्लोडाउन 1990 के तरह दिख रहा है। मेरा सवाल ये है कि कितना उस तरह से है और कितना अलग है, क्या अलग है, अगर अलग है तो।
Thank you.
Oh my God, senior moment, I've forgotten the first question. This is, okay, I'm going to end with that one. Is the crisis like 1991 or even like 2008? No, I would say it's worse, okay? Why is it worse? Because in 1991, you didn't really have a problem of effective demand, you had a balance of payments problem. And it was that kind of messed up everything else in your economy, and there were still many things you could adjust to actually sort it out, which effectively is what happened in 1991. In 2008, it was a crisis brought upon by what is going on in the outside world. We were in a much stronger situation at that time. The Indian economy was stronger, it could better withstand it, it had fiscal room to actually increase its expenditure, and it used that fiscal space. So 2008 was also much better. Today, we have a very uncertain world economy, which is already in a downswing, and where there are all these black swan events like the virus in China and so on, which are already affecting international trade and output and so on. And this is happening at a time when we ourselves are very, very weak and very fragile. So today's is a much potentially more damaging economic crisis than we have had in the past. I don't want to scare all of you because, but on the other hand, you may as well know that if we have that combination, along with a government that seems to be as macroeconomically clueless as it is, then the outcome cannot be pretty. It will have to be a big mess. And in fact, the more they open up sectors to make them vulnerable and fragile and susceptible to international capital flows and so on, the more vulnerable we are to an even bigger economic and financial mess. Having said that, there is still a way out of it. There are still ways to deal with it, not what is currently being attempted, but as I mentioned, these kinds of positive multiplier effects. That brings me to the point about, what about the guys in Infosys or the gals in Infosys and so on who are losing their jobs? So here's the thing. The point about a multiplier effect is that it raises aggregate economic activity. Now, once you generate a process of growth, then it's what Hyman Minsky called a bubbling up of economic growth, not a trickling down. You're getting the growth bubbling up from the demand at the lower sides, and these multiplier effects feed in over time. But remember, these sectors that I'm talking about, they're extremely labor-intensive, but it's not all unskilled labor. Both the care industries in general, health, education, and so on, and the creative industries have employed the entire range of different kinds of labor, and especially the creative industries. So yeah, maybe the guy will not be doing a software program for some silly company in Detroit, okay? But maybe they will be writing software programs for a new kind of creative industry because of the fact that demand has risen. Health and education in particular, we massively underprovide. We are among the worst providers of health and education services in the country. If we actually just fill all the vacancies in the government, by the way, if we begin by filling all the vacancies in the government today, both central and state, 14 million employment like that. Okay, you will make up all the losses that you have lost since 2011-12. And that in turn has multiplier effects because the people who have money will then go out there and not just demand basic goods, but they will also demand services, including all these other services like entertainment and so on and so forth. So medical services can be extremely skilled. Medical technologies can require all kinds of different people working. What I'm saying is that, we have to just open our minds up a little bit in terms of the kinds of jobs that can be created. They're not all necessarily in factories or in the, I'm not saying they're pakoras. Let's be clear on that one. Pakora making is not what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of a much wider and diverse range of occupations, but they do come about, and we know they come about because of the significance of these jobs across the world in countries that are dynamic, including China. So it's possible if you generate an upward cycle to get many, many different kinds of jobs with different kinds of skill requirements to be generated. But you need that push. It's not going to be happening if you don't create that push. And unless you create that push, you just keep going down and down the downward cycle. Finally, then, okay, so how come this doesn't affect the economy? It doesn't affect the politics. And I have to confess, there you have me, because I really did feel that the terrible economic record of the Modi government, even in 2019 May, would have actually affected its electoral prospects. And I don't think I was wrong. I think that certainly 2 months before the election, there were a lot of rumblings and perceptions that, things were not okay and so on. But then they managed to swing it by doing crazy things like Balakot, the Pulwama attack, about which there are many questions, the Balakot incident, about which there are even more questions, and then using a very pliant media to somehow persuade people that they are the only ones who can uphold the national interest, and it's the national interest which is at stake. Many people who were actually extremely disaffected with everything they'd done felt, oh no, but finally for the nation we have to just make sure, and for our security and so on, we have to make sure that they are still in power. I think you can play that game for a while, and I'm sure they will try and play it again. It's not gone away. I'm sure they will also try and polarize. They will try and create deep sort of Hindu, Muslim and other kinds of divisions to ensure. But I think there are limits to that process. I used to believe that, Indian society will not tolerate extremes beyond a point, but I may be wrong. I do believe that the upsurge of protests that we have seen across the country in very, very different and unexpected locations from very unexpected sources, I think that's an indication that we will not tolerate extremes beyond a point. And I think that these protests are also driven by the recognition that this is a government that has presided over an economic collapse. So it's not entirely that they're being let off the hook. Let me put it that way. Okay, thanks.
Jayati, I'm sorry we keep getting up. As teachers, you can't sit and talk because you lose half your passion. Thanks very much, Jayati. You just brought the whole sweep of things into it. And in the end, I'd just like to say one or two things. One is that economics has the questions, but the answers lie in politics. I think that is something we should really be clear about. There was also a question which was asked about economists, when we talk about pracharak and vicharak. Just to give you two examples, the new so-called face of the Delhi elections of the BJP is somebody who insists that wo note bandi nahi thi, wo note badli thi. Now, what is the difference between note bandi and note badli is something which is unimaginable. The issue then becomes how many zeros in a trillion. I think that's also a question which could not be answered. So right now there's no economist, I think, who's really worth the name. It's probably those who have failed or not been in Jamia or JNU or ANU or whatever. Yeah, any anti-national place. Also, the second thing I would like to say is, the link between, I think we need to, as economists, also build in a lot of what I call discriminatory economics into our understanding of budgets, etc. Now, just as one example of what happened yesterday in the budget is that all the fellowships and the free ships for ST and SC students have been scrapped. Okay, it comes in two little lines somewhere where you can't even see it. And this really means that the budget is based totally on a caste perspective. You don't need Dalits, they're out of your caste system. ये आदिवासी कौन है, ये तो भगवान में मानते ही नहीं है, उनको निकालो. मुसलमान जो है वो हिंदू भगवान में ही मानते नहीं है, तो उनको बेवतन करो. So this kind of I think interpretation is something also which is very necessary to understand. In the end, I have two major complaints against the Mumbai collective. I want to put them forward. One, that it is held only once a year. I think if we put in all our resources, financial, human, everything, maybe twice a year if we can manage. And the second complaint is this hall is too small. So next time, let's book Wankhede Stadium.